We have representatives here. Thank you very much. You are doing very well. But you must also be transparent and accountable. We want Parliament to assist. We want Parliament to have the government to continue to resource you as the #1 broadcaster for this nation. And we do appreciate what you do. But if you have situations where, in an election year, political parties are required to pay so much to advertise. We advertise in the private media, we pay. And when we advertise with GBC, radio, television, those parties must pay. And when after the elections, we want to look at the records of payment of those parties and you can't find them, that's a challenge. So you must also be transparent and accountable. If I should speak for you, I should speak to your records. If I records number and records anywhere, then you make my work difficult. True or false? GBC, true or false? True. Say so. Let other people hear you. You don't want to talk. So that's where we are. We want transparency and accountability in our national life. That transparency and accountability should not be limited to the political players, not only to members of parliament, not to ministers, not to the Speaker of Parliament, not to the President, not only to the judiciary. All other public servants, you exist to provide service for the public, and you must be transparent and accountable. So public institutions are required to be accountable as well. The ministry engaged political parties on the theme, monetization of politics in Ghana, a focus on solutions. The program was held to identify and discuss measures that could be instituted to address the excessive monetization of our politics. The dialogue carried out an introspection of the effects of monetization on the quality of governance in Ghana. We examined the growing contribution of political parties to monetization and evaluated strategies that can be adopted to curb monetization in politics. And the ministry, by that engagement, had that collaboration with political parties to improve upon the quality of democracy. The recommendations that ensued from that session in order to curb the level of monetization of politics are as follows: that we should review the constitution, that is the 1992 Republican Constitution, to make political parties and the electorate more responsive. 2, we must reform the political parties law in order for them to be much more open and transparent and accountable. The political parties should let us know where they are getting their monies from. They don't want to talk about that. We have all manner of people contributing, and yet the political party law proscribes any non-Ghanaian from contributing. When the law was made, 5 million. 5 million today is 50 cities, right? Or is it 500 cities? 500 cities. It's 500 cities. What it means is that nobody, no non-Ghanaian can contribute more than 500 Ghana cities to a political party. And yet we know what happens behind the curtains. If we want to be realistic, we must review the political parties law. Then we must also review the assets declaration law. Political activists, public servants are required to declare their assets every 4 years, right? When you declare your assets, you then take it to the Auditor General. What is the Auditor General supposed to do with it? He seals it, then he deposits it somewhere. Maybe when somebody enters into a litigation with you and you have a court case, the matter could be interrogated. Other than that, nobody raises an issue about that. But why is it that when you declare your assets, the Constitution provides that you should lodge it with the Auditor General It is so because the Auditor General must look at it, audit it. So if within 4 years you have built 4 houses, the Auditor General then will call you into question. Where did you get the money from to build the 4 houses? And if you had good money, did you pay your taxes? Is the responsibility of the Auditor General. But however it came to be structured in our constitution, the constitution is silent on it. It just says that deposit with the Auditor General. And the Auditor General, as if he is your watchman, you just deposit it with him and he keeps it till thy kingdom come. That is not supposed to be the arrangement. He is supposed to open your declared assets. The other day I heard somebody say that last count he had about 100 houses. Say, and you're why are they? 100 houses, no. Property rate being in the established democracies, if you have a house located anywhere, you pay property rate. The property rate is calculated, 1, the location of the property, the provision of utilities, water, electricity, telephone services, and the prime location of that facility, and finally, the cost, the evaluated cost of that property. These 6 factors determine the rate that you pay to the council. Accra, Kumasi, Sekondi Takoradi, Tamale, these metropolitan areas, they don't require government support to stay alive. If they were diligent in raking in property rates, they will not require to rely on common fund. And the common fund should go to support distressed distress. Like Lambusier. Should I add Swami? I mean, we know the districts that are distressed. They should go to support them, not the endowed districts. But go to Land Valuation Board and go and look at the property, the cost of the assigned rates of the property in Accra. You'll be surprised to realize that mansions in Accra, the rate that is assigned to maybe that property will be about maybe 50,000, 100,000. So at the end of the day, the district assembly can only go and request that in that regard, pay property rate of 200 Ghana cedis on that property. Whereas if it is properly evaluated, that one property, because it's usually a percentage of the combined effect of these factors that I've alluded to. So that property perhaps should be attracting maybe about 100,000 Ghana cedis for a year because of its location, because of its value. And yet that property is assigned a rate of 400 cedis. If we did that, okay, I say, oh, Sikachi and Bill Gates. Why is Bill Gates not building 200 houses in America? Because of property rates. So we should do this. There should be proper assets declaration. And as for those of them engaged in the monetization of politics, there should be proper sanctions. There must be a state funding of political parties with clearly defined modalities for its implementation, strengthen the internal political parties mechanisms, the need for consistent public education on the ill effects of monetization of politics on national development, and the mandate of the Electoral Commission must be reviewed and a different institution established to be solely responsible for the regulation of political parties. The EC charged with the conduct of elections. But the regulation of political parties is something that has become difficult for the Electoral Commission. Perhaps the time has come to assign another institution with that responsibility. The law provides that if you don't exist in 2/3 of the districts in this country, you don't have to be registered as a political party. The Electoral Commission, without recourse to this provision in the Constitution, would usually give them a provisional certificate when they don't exist in 2/3 of the districts. We should be religious about that. And once we are able to do this, the multiplicity of political parties that we have in the system, I think we have more than 32 or so registered political parties in this country. And yet we know that in terms of ideology, there can only be two political parties. There can only be two political parties. You either belong to the left or you belong to the right. The directive principles of state policy, which has defined the broad goal of development for us as a nation, compels all political parties to belong to the center. So in spite of ourselves, I belong to the NPP, in spite of ourselves, we are just a liberal party, a rightist liberal party. So we belong just a little bit to the right of the center. The NDC, in spite of themselves, also belong to just a little bit to the left of the center. We are all centrist parties. And it's the reason why a liberal party like the NPP, it was, that introduced school feeding, that introduced health insurance, which otherwise should be the remit of a social democratic party, not a liberal democratic party. But it is because of the imperatives of the Constitution, which is forcing us to do this. So, ladies and gentlemen, we should do what is right for this nation. And I think if we did, we'll be growing up together as a nation in leaps and bounds. The ministry organized a day's workshop for the National Commission for Civic Education, the Electoral Commission, the Media Commission, and the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice. And the theme for the program was Independent Governance Institutions and Election 2020 in Ghana, some reflections. And we discussed 4 topics. 1, securing free and responsible regulatory environment for the media processes towards 2020 elections. Strengthening the institutional capacity of the NCC to deliver voter education towards the 2020 elections. So these, we are talking about what happened in year 2020. Revisiting the human rights dimensions of democratic elections in Ghana, lessons from the 2020 elections, towards an effective electoral management in Ghana, the 2020 elections in perspective. The program was useful as one examined the various factors impinging on the credibility of the electoral process, reviewing the capacity of the NCC for the conduct of voter education, interrogated the regulatory framework to guide the conduct of the media practitioners, discussed the human rights dimensions of democratic elections in Ghana. The ministry is positioned to support Ghana's transformation above everything else to deepening democratic governance, to harmonizing relationship between Parliament and the executive, supporting the capacity building efforts of Parliament, enhancing the ability of the leader of government business to execute his or her functions, and supporting the independent governance institutions to function optimally, and encouraging the participation of civil society organizations in the formulation and implementation of public policies and programs. And we do this, hitherto, when government comes with their own programs, they go to Parliament. Civil society has little contribution towards. So what we do these days is to lift the programs and policies in their formative days, bring them up to engage civil society for their participation. Indeed, again, if you look at the Constitution provides for the Council of State, for instance, to advise the President on bills that go to Parliament, which the President perhaps, after its passage by Parliament, would not want to assent to, but refer to the Council of State for advice. Now, if the Council of State is not following what Parliament is doing, and it goes to them, and they are required to proffer advice to the President, what advice would they give to the President on that? They will not proffer any useful advice. So what I've done is to engage the Council of State such that any bill that comes to Parliament, we submit copies to them, and sometimes I have some discussions with them on the memorandum, that is the objects, the principles and policies behind that bill, and then they also follow Parliament, what Parliament is doing, and they're able then to know what is right, what is wrong with this bill. So that if, after its passage, it goes to the President refers it to them, having followed the deliberations in Parliament, they will have appreciated what Parliament did, and if there should be any filling in, it will be better placed to do what the Constitution requires of them. And so we're enhancing governance. And the civil society organizations, we found a way to also let them have copies of such programs for them to deliberate on, and then they will touch base with Parliament and also with the ministry, and then we synthesize the ideas from civil society organizations and then factor them into the formulation, indeed the crafting of the bills in Parliament. So, ladies and gentlemen, the ministry generally promotes consensus around the fundamental issues of development through the shaping of public policies in order to secure for ourselves and posterity the blessings of liberty, equality of opportunity, and prosperity as captured in the preamble of the 1992 Republican Constitution. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for indulging me.
Honorable Minister, thank you for the brilliant and insightful presentation. In fact, I had prepared a summary, but trust me, it was so beautiful that the presentation need not be touched. But for the purpose of the non-English speaking stations, I would like to give a minute summary in 3 so that you would appreciate all that the Honorable Minister said today. Mr. Minuanum Central for say ensema Honorable Chairman Sabunsu onona abanyaso ehwe emrahye bedwam nkita hudie so ode abeto yanim awie no ene se enama namo ne adwuma pa asoye ni tu no wahu se yebekekere oman ne yebetum pon na kabima amamu na ebekoso a enye atesem anase enye adwenkyere ene yede bekekere oman na emu mebehia se obeye mpensempense mu no adi nkita ho ahodo a ebeboa amanindifo ne amanyofo eye nsentrofo ne mpanyifo ahodo ekeka ho so di omunimdie ebeba ne aka ne nyina bom na omode aye ntotoye ebeboa ama oman na tumpon na ne titiriu ne se eye asoye no ene eye mrahye bedwafo eye dom kese ne dom kuma no mpanyimfo oda no nyina nsentrofo eye ankrankre ahodo nipa ahodo bebre adi nkita ho ama omo nso so akere se yepese kabima menka biama mu ene nkita ho eda aban ne mrahye bedwa adwuma no beko anima omode ensem ba ko mienu bi ato anim se etimi to saa na mo no ne efa saa kwan no so a ebeboa ni titiriu ene se eye ye Ghana mrapon 1992 constitution no esese ohwe na eye nsachae bi wum afi nso so eye standing orders eye Parliament of Ghana omudidi djuma ne no nso eye sachae wum na afi nso eye Public Affairs Directorate ene press corps wo Parliament no esese omo djumadi omo hyemukina na afi nso so eye mra ye de cheche National Media Commission no ɛno nso ɛsɛ ɔyɛ nsakyerɛeɛ wɔ mu ebio ɛyɛ mmara a ɛma kwan ma obi timi fa ɛyɛ microphone anaasɛ ɔfa phone anaa biribi si n'anim na ɔka sɛ metwa mfonyin na me nso mede abɛto abɔnten ama amansan ahwɛ bi no ɛyɛ sɛ yɛtumi ɛkyekyere saa mmara no mu ne titiro ne broadcasting law a afei ne yɛbɛtwa me apaase no na ebio nso so ɛyɛ ankorankora nso ɔne ɔmu di nkita ho nso so ɛde adwenkyerɛ a ɛbɛboa ama ɛyɛ COVID-19 yare ya bɛsɛn yɛ kɔn mu koraa na ɛbɛboa na Ghana man ne sikasɛm ntotoyɛ yɛtumi ahyɛ mu kena na ebio sɛ ɛbɛboa na ɛyɛ mmara a yɛde kyekyere amanyɔkuo ahodoɔ yɛde yɛ amanyɔsɛm wɔ Ghana ha ɛbɛboa na ɔmatumi ayɛ nsakyerɛeɛ a ɛma sika bebree a yɛtoto gu abɔnten so asɛ again sɛ yɛbɛboa na ntotoyɛ pa ɛne nkurɔfoɔ a ɔmunim de ɛwɔ amanyɔsɛm ɔmbɛtumi abam na ne nyinaa nkɔyɛ sika ɛno nso so yɛbɛtumi ahyehyɛ ho mmara yie na afei nso so ɛyɛ ɔmo agye penee sɛ ɔmbɛsom aban as ebi a ɛyɛ obi wɔ hɔ yɛ mmarahyɛbadwani obi wɔ hɔ nso so a ɔda ekuo bi ano anaasɛ ɔyɛ minister na deputy ɛsɛ sɛ mmara a yɛfrɛ na asɛ declaration a ɛboa ma asɛ bi ɔmo agyapadeɛ ne ɔmo ahonya ne ho ntotoyɛ nyinaa ɔmo de bɛto abɔnten anaasɛ ɔmo de bɛba aban mu na akɔ nkrataa mu na ɔmo atumi abu ho akonta no ɛno nso so waka ho asɛm sɛ saa mmara no nso so ɛho nhyehyɛeɛ yɛde ɛyɛ adwuma na nyame adom a aboa me yɛtumi akyekyere ɔman ne yie ɛne nsɛm bebree kwa ɛna honorable minister ɛde abɛdan yɛ awie enti yɛbɛda honorable minister ase ɛne naso yɛyɛ ne adwuma pa ɔmo yɛde boa Ghana man. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we will take 2 sets of questions. Because of time, we can take 5 questions for a start and then go to the Honorable Minister for his responses, and we'll come back for your follow-up questions if there are any, and then call it a day. So if you have a question, kindly show by hand. We'll bring the microphone to you. You mention your name and media house and proceed to ask your question. So we'll take the first one from him one, and then take one from here.
Right, thank you very much. My name is Kweku Asante from Joy News. The Honorable Minister mentioned the e-levy and some of the concerns that have been generated. The Finance Minister spoke a while ago, some time back, and said that negotiation was ongoing between both sides in Parliament to reach a certain agreement. Since the House is inching closer to rising, I want to know if there's been any agreement. And the minority have also been raising concerns about their motion for rescission. They've said that they are going to move it again when the substantive speaker arrives. We know he's back in town. I just wanted to know if he has any information on that, and if that is hampering the current negotiations and the sittings of the committees of Parliament on the estimates. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll take the second question from this one.
Thank you. My name is Atamensa from Ghana News Agency. My first question is with regards to parliamentarian burden, dialogue, and consensus. And I think over the period, we have witnessed some melee in Parliament, especially during the swearing-in of the president, before the swearing of the president, what happened on the floor of Parliament, and even recently, the debate on the 2022 budget. We have experienced heckling and near fisticuffs. And sometimes when we watch on television, people watch on television, they begin to ask questions as to whether the dialogue and the consensus burden is working in Parliament. I want your response to this. Then, 2. You mentioned e-levy and the things that it intends to do. It's very laudable policy. But will you say that government has failed to educate the populace on the importance of this levy? Because it seems the opposition is gaining grounds in convincing people to reject it, even though at the end of the day it is Parliament that will approve it. But in the public sphere, people are beginning to think that government is not being concerned to the hardship in the country. So they are coming up with this e-levy to worsen the situation. Do you think government has failed to educate the citizenry about the importance of this levy so that people will accept it? Thank you.
Thank you. Please, okay, I'll take one from the lady and then John. Okay. And then we'll take the fifth from the back.
Okay, so my name is Agnes. I report for the Chronicle. On the e-levy, the minister made us understand that it is going to be used for the construction of roads and for payments of contractors and all that. But the argument since its mention has always been that if we are to pay, then it means we are being taxed double. So I want the minister to clarify or to let us know if he agrees to the fact that we should be paying double taxes. Thank you.
Yes, my name is John Awuni. I represent Kesben. Recently, His Royal Highness Otumfo made a comment regarding the e-levy. The minority has descended heavily on him. What is Honorable's comment on that? Is it part of those MPs talking on their heads, as he mentioned in his presentation? And secondly, the lack of consensus that he mentioned. Some are attributing the blame on the majority leader for his posture or whatever. That is making the consensus not to happen. What is his response to that? Thank you.
Okay, so we'll take the last question from the back.
Good afternoon, Honorable. Pastor Efemi Opokumi from Kingdom FM. My question is two different questions. But among for Honorable Kasano, now Omeki reference say they need to public person IAB scanning abroso. So say Buani taxes. So among for raise issue say Abai Enya say TC President. So on cuts it down still now the ministers to be on my advisors to be on cuts it down. TC say your presidential advisor on health. There's some presidential advisor on HIV/AIDS. These two, no, if you I will say cut it down. Minister Ohun is saying on your suggestion, how does he take it? And the second question is also here. Among for raising clauses, say members of parliament, you know, also no time be a census and the panel also be no. Now I say some creating more constituencies. So I say you cut it down MPs no more parliaments, no. Now cut it down cost. And among for so raise issues say as gracia so Sabio ehun shada enke ehia kakra it's anke yente so and I say yen cut in the cry out minister so ohun is en kakra medase.
Okay, thank you. So I will yield the podium to the Honorable Minister to respond to your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Joy News, you indicated that the finance minister has related to some negotiations on the e-levy. Yes, negotiations are still ongoing, and indeed, you know, this whole brouhaha that has ensued from the budgets. It had to do with four issues. One, the five issues, I should say. One was the acre agreement. Two was the Ejapa agreement. Three was the Blekuso Keita Sea Defense. Four, the budget to Parliament. And five, the e-levy. Since the day when the minority purportedly rejected the budgets, which some of us dispute because it was an affront to the Constitution, they didn't have the numbers in the House to have done what they alleged to have done, which in the view of some of us was a nullity. Since that Friday, we've been having some serious discussions. And some of us thought that because the Right Honorable Speaker was in the chair, we should do everything to protect the integrity of the chair. Even I find that what he did was wrong. But how do you protect the integrity of the chair without bringing the chair into disrepute, even though what he did, I insist, was totally wrong? So, one, we're dealing with that. Two, the minister, the day when we walked out on that Friday, had indicated to speak to the issues before the winding up statements from the minority leader and myself as the majority leader, which request was refused by the speaker, and he threw it to the plenary. The speaker is the person charged with authority to admit questions, motions, prayers, that is pleas, petitions, and so on. But the speaker abdicated that responsibility and said he was throwing it to the plenary, which was unheard of. But it's a yesterday matter, so let me leave that. So we have been discussing the issues that ensued, and the minister said if he had been given the opportunity, he was going to relate to these matters. One, the KTC thing happened after the budget had been crafted. But it's a force majeure. It was something that was not anticipated that happened. But you see, dealing with the Keta coastal menace really is a Herculean responsibility. Anybody who has gone to sea, how many of you are coasters? I at the point operated some canoes in my earlier life. I had some canoes, 4 of them, with outboard motors that I was operating from Apam, and they were going to sea. I had some contract with them. At the end of the day, they were cheating me, so I sold them. But one occasion, I entered the canoe from Shama. I wanted to see how it was. If you have been there before, you will see the waves drive you towards the east. Now, people do know that the experts will tell you that the coastal erosion at Kita became accentuated and aggravated after the construction of the Tema Harbour, the breakwater. That if you want to stop it, what is happening at Kita, we need now to develop a major harbour at Kita, which will require the construction of a breakwater that will extend long into the sea, maybe 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers. That will stop that menace. Until we do that, it will be difficult. And I had this from the renowned engineer Professor Mausidake. He, together with a group of marine and coastal engineers, gave me this education way back in 1998. Remember in 1999, in opposition then, we had a major press conference on the Kita Sea Defense Wall. It was the collaboration and education that I had with this that caused me to craft that piece, which we had the press conference with. At the time, Kwame Abatelso was our spokesperson on Western Housing. So, as a nation, we need to do serious engineering studies, perhaps to review what was done, which occasioned the construction of the Kita Sea Defense Wall. So, the minister was saying that he was going to respond to that. And as you heard him lately, he has availed 10 million cedis to review the engineering studies that happened those days to see how we can go forward on that. So the minister has responded to that. The second is the Aka energy. Indeed and in truth, the resolution that Parliament passed and how it's been captured in the budget, there's a slight discrepancy. And the minister said he was going to write the construct in the budget. The other one has to do with the Japa. The Japa thing is not reflected in terms of financials in the budget. The minister said he only mentioned it to enable us to know that it's still on the burner. He, when it was introduced and when the Bruha was generated, said he was going to engage in further consultations and come back to Parliament. The consultations have not been concluded. But then he put it there in the budget to let Ghanaians know that it is still on the burner. After the consultations, it will come back to Parliament. So that was the reason. For Parliament's own budget, we are still dealing with it. And it's been adjusted somewhat to take care of some other things. Now, the outstanding thing then is the e-levy. So over the weekend, we're having serious engagements on these matters. Into the Tuesday when we met and then voted to approve the budget. The minority's position at the time, at the very outset, was that they had zero tolerance for the e-levy, that they were not going to accommodate it at all. But then as we began the discussions and negotiations, they moved from the zero tolerance zone to a tolerance zone. And then the talk was about maybe 0.5% they were accommodated. But ultimately, they came to a point that they would agree to 1%, but not more than 1%. The minister was at the same time to also engage the operators of the system. And he succeeded in talking to them for the operators to bring their costs down by 0.25%, which means that effectively now, the total consideration of the rate, that is the operators plus the request for the ministry, has gone down by 0.25%. And the minister is still further engaged in the discourse with the stakeholders in the industry. If we are fortunate for it to climb down further, then it will affect ultimately the level of the total calculation of the rate applicable. So that is what the minister alluded to. And we are still in that. That perhaps could even happen after the passage of the estimates. If it happens that way, then all the better for all of us. If it doesn't happen, and the climb down is by 0.25, I believe that, seriously, we need money to grow the establishment. What Parliament should be demanding, my view, is that yes, we need roads. We need these infrastructure facilities. How much you anticipate to have? Maybe 8 billion, 9 billion. How much are you dedicating to the construction of roads? How much are you dedicating to the construction of educational facilities, the construction of health facilities? Let us know, so that Parliament will be able to track and trace the utilization of the monies from the e-levy. I think that should be the responsibility of Parliament as part of our oversight responsibility. But to say that physically I will not allow you to do that, I'm not sure where that is coming from. Because when push comes to shove, we have to vote on it. And it will depend on the numbers that you have, the strength of your forces, right? But should we get to that point? I'm not sure. Let's dialogue. In my view, it is the position of any responsible opposition to critique, however strenuous it is, government policies and programs. When you have done so, and government wouldn't listen, you leave it and tell Ghanaians that I think this is not going to work, or it's not going to work the way government thinks that it's going to work. If it doesn't work, you win the day, isn't it the case? After all, you are an alternative government. If you want to be physical, to be throwing blows in Parliament, that is outrageous. That is Stone Age politics. And I don't buy into that. So we are still negotiating. I think that human as we are, the accounts have an adage. You see, right? In other words, when we sleep and we sleep well, if you sleep and sleep well, your pillow would provide some, elucidation of matters that you'll be dreaming of in your sleep, and you wake up the wiser. So I think that as we go along, compromises give and take, and we'll see how it goes. But I think that we'll come to some determination on this. The other question, Joy, that you raised is about the motion for rescission. You are drawing me to Parliament, but this is Ministry for Parliamentary Affairs. I wanted to resist it, but for the import of the question, I wanted to not respond to it. Because sometimes when we are talking about Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs, people confuse Parliamentary Affairs Ministry with Parliament. The two are different. But because of the importance of this question, I would just encapsulate my response in a few sentences. The minority allegedly voted to reject the bill. The numbers were inadequate. So we said it was a nullity. Nothing has happened. With sufficient numbers, we voted to approve of the budget. Now they are saying that they want a rescission, a motion to rescind the decision that we took. And it happened, I think, last 2 weeks. The minority leader brought a motion that he wanted us to rescind the decision to approve the budget. I raised preliminary issues that the minority leaders' motion should not be tolerated on 2 grounds. One, the motion of November was what in Parliament we call a motion notice. That motion is advertised in the order paper of the day. It's a motion on notice. The Speaker has admitted it. It's advertised, and he came to move the motion. Our orders provide that if a motion is moved on notice and you want to amend that motion, you cannot come by a motion without notice. What the minority leader did was a motion without notice, arrest a motion that had come on notice. that is unacceptable. And anybody who knows our standing orders will throw it away. Which is why I asked the Speaker who was presiding at the time, the Deputy Speaker who was presiding at the time, whether he's aware of that, one. And second, assuming without admitting that that was even acceptable, a motion that is moved without notice should come with the prior approval of the Speaker. So I asked the Deputy Speaker who was presiding whether he had given prior approval to the motion that the minority leader sought to move. And he said he had been in his enclave for 1.5 hours. And the minority leader had not seen him with the motion that he was attempting to move. So it was on these 2 counts. He did not discuss it with the Speaker. The Speaker did not give prior approval to it. And that he wanted to come with a motion without notice to arrest a motion that had come on notice. And so he ruled against it. Unfortunately, they were saying that, well, what had happened earlier was at the instance of the Right Honorable Speaker. And when we overturned that decision, we also didn't have the numbers in Parliament. And the Speaker is quoted to have said that he is a member of Parliament for Bekwai, and he is not the Speaker, which is true. The Constitution provides that our Speaker, Right Honorable Speaker, does not have a voting right neither an original vote nor a casting vote. Why? Because our Speaker is not a member of Parliament. In jurisdictions where speakers are members of Parliament, they don't have original votes. Those speakers don't have original votes, but they have casting votes. Why? Because once you sit in the chair, even if you are a member of Parliament, you are supposed to be a neutral arbiter, a referee, so to speak. So you don't participate in the proceedings. When it comes to voting, you don't show your head. But you have a casting vote where there is a tie. So that's a distinction. Our Speaker is not a member of Parliament, so he doesn't have a casting vote. He doesn't have an original vote. But in jurisdictions where speakers are members of Parliament, they have casting votes. And in this case, Osei Wusu is a member of Parliament. So when the Constitution provides in Article 104 that the correct number for taking the decision should be at least 1/2 of members of Parliament in Parliament, Osei Wusu must be counted as a member of Parliament. He's a member of Parliament. So he said that he's a member of Parliament representing Bekwai, but that he is not the Speaker who doesn't have a voting right. He has a voting right, except that his voting right is only at the level of casting the vote, right? Not having the original vote. But he can cast his vote when there is a tie. Then said, oh, if he's not the Speaker, then let me go and pull the chair. You know, very much uninitiated member of Parliament. He doesn't even understand this. That's unfortunate. And so we give the impression that we are fighting amongst ourselves, which is most unfortunate. But as I was saying, so that was the basis for the motion of rescission, which was rejected by the Speaker. Subsequent to that, because they realized that they should have come by a motion on notice, they then went and filed a motion on notice and submitted the motion to the Speaker, who again declined because he said nothing new was coming from them, from the minority. So he was not admitting it. However, it came about. That motion was then taken to the site in Dubai. And he admitted on the motion that he has admitted it. What it meant was that at that given time, there were 2 speakers. I mean, and that is intolerable. It's unconscionable. We can't have 2 speakers presiding at the same time. Once you are not there, the deputy speaker who assumes responsibility takes full charge. And so you can't be in, outside and then try to say that you are still in charge in Ghana. I've admitted it. So, have it deliberated on. It's an unfortunate situation. And I want to believe that we'll let sleeping dogs lie. Because you see, we've moved beyond that. The reason is, my colleagues who opposed it at the very outset, now we are together in committees. We are considering the estimates. You can't put something on nothing. If the budget is rejected, why are we together considering the estimates? It means we agree that the budget has been approved. That's why we are considering the estimates. Is that not the case? So how can you come back and say that we should go back to reject the budget? To me, I think you'll be taking us back. You should allow sleeping dogs to lie. I don't think that he will want to go back. But if what I'm hearing is true, that he wants to take us back, well, the law will decide. That's all that I can say about that. GNA. MPs, the need for MPs to build dialogue and consensus. In fact, that is what we've been trying to do. And I'll tell you. And we said, somebody says that is the majority leader, Kesben. He said the majority leader who is to blame for not building consensus. I'll state it as a matter of fact. I've been minority leader for 8 years. And my 8 years as minority leader, the majority leaders who were there, none of them invited me just one day to any meeting. 8 years. The chief director and the staff of the ministry know that we have working sessions at the instance of the ministry. We've held sometimes, working dinners that I've had with my colleagues, many of them. It's never happened in the history of Parliament before. My colleagues in the opposite side walk to my office anytime. We dialogue. Sabi, we eat together. What else do I do? As minority leader, I never had occasion. I never had the occasion except one day that we went to Professor Mills. It had to do with when he came, he said Parliament had not approved of the Chief Committee's report and that he had thrown it away. We went to him one day to discuss it, that what position he had taken was wrong. That was the only day that we succeeded in going to President Mills. President Mahama, a former member of Parliament, not once did he invite the leadership of Parliament to his office to have any discourse. Akufo-Addo, at my instance, has had meetings with the leadership, collective leadership of Parliament. On at least 3 occasions, we've been at dinner with him. And who is saying that we are not building consensus? Please, it's not true. We do this, but you see, the problem is, like this matter that came before us when the president suggested that we should work to elect the MMDCs. In Parliament, with the leaders, we had agreed. And we had gone to seal it at Kempiski. And then we left. And the following day, their party came in and said, no, you don't like it, they should not be part of it. My colleagues on the other side. And I think the party in Parliament should be liberated to lead. But it's pull strings. That's the difficulty. And it makes the work very difficult. Because we agree. We had agreed this